christiangeekcentral.com.
Hold still! You lied to me!
In my face! In the face!
Put it in the peanut butter.
In my face! I thought you said this guy was a Christian. What is this?
Liberate tu teme.
Now you guys get to hear my chomping and chewing noises. I think I have a louder than average chewing mechanism. That's what my family tells me. My sister, my wife. You get to hear that stuff squishing around inside. That's the good stuff. Now you're all barfing in your homes next to your computers. Okay, Eclectic 1995 says, or asks, I should say, what is your preferred fighting style in movies? Fast and acrobatic or strong and grounded? That's a really interesting question. Probably fast and acrobatic. Or at least acrobatic, you know? Man, when I heard that they were making a Batman movie, and I'm talking about Christian Bale's Batman movie, I thought, we live in a post-Matrix world, and now we're getting a Batman movie. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be amazing. I'm finally going to see that kind of flashy, bombastic fighting from the comic books that Batman is always doing, because he's like one of the best martial artists in the world in the comic books. Acrobatic styles of fighting, all kinds of cool stuff that artists would do with his fights. And I was like, we're going to see that. This is a post-Matrix world. They're going to give us that now. We finally get that, you know, instead of Tim Burton's and the bad guy falls down, you know. Which was cool in its time, but not in a post-Matrix world. It's like, now it's time to cut loose. But then instead, with Chris Nolan's trilogy, we got this really grounded, not flashy kind of take. In some ways, that was really cool. I mean, in terms of the story, that was really cool. It grounded everything. He was going for realism. I think he was going for it very selectively in the sequel, especially because I wanted a stained skin Joker, not a guy who paints his face. I wanted a guy whose skin was stained white because he fell in the vat of chemicals. That's what I wanted. I didn't want some guy that paints himself. I can't give you an argument for why that would make a better story. It's just what I wanted. And we didn't get that, but we did get a bridging vehicle that also turns into a motorcycle. Remember in the first movie, the Batmobile was a bridging vehicle made by the military as a bridging vehicle prototype? You know, that was very grounded in realism. They never got the bridge to work, but they got the jumping of the, you know, and it was all tank-like and stuff. But then we find out that apparently the military also designed this bridging vehicle to become a motorcycle when required. What? So we throw realism out the window there, but we can't have a Joker whose skin and hair are stained. Oh well. Yeah, I was disappointed in the fighting style, especially in the Batman Begins. It was very subdued, very, you know, lots of camera work that covered up. You didn't get to see him fighting very much. He was just much more in the shadows and almost off camera at times, the way they moved the camera around, and, you know, I understand why they did it, and each one of those three movies has grown on me to the point where, like, this is a great movie. I can say I love this movie. I think they are all very well-made movies. Christopher Nolan, I think, is a great filmmaker. I just wanted something different out of a Batman movie. I can't look at any of those movies and say, for my tastes and for kind of what I mark as like the benchmarks of good filmmaking, you know, whatever that is for you might be different. I can't look at any of those movies and say these are poorly made movies. I look at those movies and I'm like, wow, these movies were really well made. But dang it, they missed checking a number of boxes that I want in a Batman movie, you know. And I would argue that they function in some ways better as Gotham City movies about Gotham and its inhabitants. Because there's a good amount where it's not about Batman. He's not in the suit, he's not in the costume. In the third movie in the series, you don't see him in the suit until halfway through the movie. You can get away with that in an origin story. But in the third movie in the series, you're going to wait till halfway through to get him in the suit? No. Still a very well-made movie, but missing some important things. I also think they should have recast the Joker. Christopher Nolan went on record, I believe, at one point and said the only one that will ever play the Joker as long as he's making these movies is Heath Ledger. And that was after Heath Ledger had died that he said that. And I was like, I respect the man's performance. And I mourn the fact that he died, But let's not make the mistake of attaching his significance to that performance, and then as a result of that saying, oh, we don't want to tread on his performance. We don't want to replace him because that would take away from his value. It would say something. It would say that he could be replaced. No, I think we got to get away from that and say that what he did was cool and interesting. It was one absolutely valid take on the Joker. I wanted a different valid take on the Joker that was something closer to Mark Hamill's performance as the Joker. That bombastic showmanship, but with all the dark twistedness that they brought in with like the pencil gag in The Dark Knight Returns. There should have been pencil gags, stuff like the pencil gag all over that movie, instead of it just being kind of this one or two little dark humor moments. Dark humor should have been everywhere coming from the Joker, constantly shocking us and making us feel weird about laughing, Anyway, all you asked about was what fighting style I liked. This is Arcania, The Complete Tale, which was originally released on like PS3 and Xbox 360. Excuse me, I sometimes, when I'm working out a burp, I sometimes move my head in a weird way. So if you ever see me do this, I'm probably trying to decide, does this burp want to go somewhere? Favorite comic book writers / stories? For me, Jeff Johns really rose the bar for me. When he was writing comics, I'm a little bit bummed that he doesn't write comics as often. He's kind of overseeing things more, even though I think that's good probably for the DC unit. Well, I don't know, maybe it's not, because I don't like what they're doing with the New 52. But anything that he gets his hands directly on when he's writing it, I tend to really enjoy. Yeah, Jeff Johns, he just seems to understand the core of what makes the DC characters interesting and iconic and unique, and he knows how to play that up really well and to humanize them, but at the same time let them be people that that either you can look up to or that are on a relatable journey of some kind. Another writer that I feel like can just, even more so than Jeff Johns, bring life to characters and make me care about them is Gail Simone. When she writes villains, they are disturbing. Like, her run of The Secret Six is possibly my favorite run of a superhero comic of all time. The characters were flawed, but I felt compassion for them. The villains they went up against, they themselves were villains. The villains they went up against were super disturbing, really enjoyable. I've said a number of times before, Gail Simone can write the phone book and make it a compelling character drama, Like when the first issue of Batgirl came out and I saw that cover, I've never liked the character of Batgirl. Never. The more variations on Superman and Batman that come out, Supergirl, Superboy, Batgirl, Batwoman, Batdog, Supercat, Superhorse. Oh my gosh. Hate it. It takes away, I feel like it just waters down the uniqueness of those core characters that they're based on. And with Batgirl, gosh, when I saw that first image of Gail Simone's Batgirl, you can Google this, she's like got her hair, shining red hair coming out of the cowl, she's smiling, got her big old girly lipstick on and stuff. I was like, she looks like she's ready to walk down the runway. She does not look like she's ready to strike terror into the hearts of criminals. And that's what the Batman mythos is about, striking fear in the hearts of criminals. And yet, even though as a character she was not about in that Gail Simone run, striking terror in the hearts of criminals, man, I feel like getting it out and reading it right now. Because it was just such a wonderfully human story. I loved it for Barbara Gordon's vulnerability, and her desire to do the right thing, and Yeah, great stuff. Getting back to Jeff Johns, his run on JSA was a big deal to me. He has such a he has such a love for the DC universe and a knowledge of it, and he knows how to take kind of like old lame properties and make them cool or dark or edgy or whatever, you know? And I so respect his ability to do that, you know? To take some lame character concept that was cheesy back in the day and add some dark twist to it or some other layer to just make it cool again. Or cool in a way that it was never cool before. So, and I felt like he did that with his run on JSA. He took these old World War II era characters, and he recognized the traditional values of that era that made those characters unique and gave them a unique voice in the DC universe. He introduced them as a generation of heroes that characters like Superman would look up to, you know? And which is one of the things I hated about the New 52 is that they... I just kind of shrugged and rolled my eyes when they made Alan Scott gay. I was just like, okay, we're checking a demographic box. I felt like the real... the thing that, like, disappointed me more was that they de-aged all of the JSA characters. They had them on a parallel Earth, and they were all in their 20s. They did the same thing with the characters in the regular, DC universe. But there was no longer an elder generation that heroes could look to for wisdom, you know? And I feel like that's certainly a sign of our times. I think only increasingly have we had a disinterest in gaining wisdom from the older generation. Part of that is because the older generation, I think, has let us down. There was I think in the one or two generations above us, there was a period in the church where there just wasn't discernment. It was just like the attitude was you just got to have faith about things, you know, and we don't deal with the hard questions, you know. Coming home from, I think that's probably partly a result of World War II. People came home from that war, and they're just like, you know, there was no, I don't think there was an understanding of post-traumatic stress at that time. So these wives, their husbands came home, didn't know how to help them. They were just broken, shattered men. And they just tried to make their life as pleasant and positive as possible. And I think that probably played a big role in the tendency of that generation and the generation following it to just kind of sweep things under the rug, not ask hard questions, not deal with hard issues. And I think I'm totally a speculating layperson, but I think that is kind of what happened there. So anyway, you know, it's understandable how we got to the point where the current generation just has no value for the wisdom of the older generation or seeking wisdom from the older generation. But it's still a bummer to see that being so represented in comic books.
I sensed something right after they found you. Something that must be...
Yes, my magical powers. Give them to me. Is that what you're going to do, lady? I want that.
Don't understand.
You don't have to. Just go with it, man.
Slumbers in...
Yeah, bring it out of my chest. Embrace this darkness. I want to throw some fireballs. Yeah, feels good. Okay, comic books. I didn't finish there, I don't think. I still love JSA. That's one of my... Jeff Johns' JSA is a read that I think I've read that 2 or 3 times. Same with Jeff Johns' Teen Titans. I was like, I am never going to be interested in a book about children superheroes. Freaking guess again, man. Oh, great stuff. Secret Six, that's Gail Simone. That's my favorite, I think, comic book run of all time. I really like the early Marvel Ultimate Universe stuff, when they were really sticking to their original vision of creating a comic book version, or creating a version of the Marvel Universe that is what it would look like if it was translated into movies. Now, if you look back, those are very different types of movies. That's a very different vision of superhero movie as represented in the early Ultimate comics compared to the Marvel movies now. Not going to talk about the Marvel movies. That's a different topic. We'll see if I roll it. I really liked that vision, that early vision. It was gritty. It was much more serious. It definitely still had humor in it. but it was also very weighty. Dealt with, I mean, like Ant-Man Giant Man slash Ant-Man and Wasp. They had an abusive relationship going on. That was one of the main parts of this, like the second story arc, I think. And the Hulk in the first story arc of the Ultimates was like, he was not a hero. He was a force of nature that they were trying to keep contained. And their very first like outing as the Avengers was to bring the Hulk down because he got loose and was like eating people. Eating people. That's not an exaggeration. That's not colorful language. In the comic, Hulk was eating people. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved that the Hulk was now, again, a potentially tragic character instead of just this super empowered. I don't like it when they make Bruce Banner able to keep his intelligence while he's the Hulk. Because that's the whole ironic tragedy of the Hulk, is that this brilliant man turns into this raging, unreasoning beast and does things that Bruce has every reason to regret when he comes out of that. You know, I mean, that speaks to the human condition. It speaks to how we say things in our anger that we regret, and we don't want to be that other person. The Hulk is such a great character as originally conceived, and as he was, maybe he wasn't originally conceived specifically that way, but those early elements of who the Hulk was, just great stuff. In the same way, and I've talked about this before, so I'll try not to get into it again. In the same way that Superman, I did a video on this, you can check it out. It was about Superman, like a secret, how to fix Superman or something like that, where I just ranted. It was during another live stream. I ranted about this. That Superman's secret identity, his original conception of a character, was by these two Jewish immigrants who felt overlooked and judged for superficial reasons. And they were like, boy, no one thinks I'm anything special, but what if secretly I was really something special? You know? And that was the whole idea of Superman, is that fantasy the fulfillment of the fantasy, I think, of every geek who wants to be appreciated for who they are, that people don't realize about them, that people judge them externally and they don't know who they are, and the good things about who they are, and they want to be appreciated and valued for those things. That was the concept of Superman. Can you imagine if they did that with Superman today, brought him back to that, where Clark Kent was not a GQ model like he is in the movies? That's I love the DC movies that have Superman in them, Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. I've made no secret of that. But that's certainly something I will come down on them and say, I miss that, guys. I miss that. You went with the 90s GQ version of Clark Kent, and what a missed opportunity that is. Maybe there was it could be any number of reasons. Could be the actor's ability, could be just the direction they wanted to take the story, or maybe they didn't understand the potential of Clark Kent, you know. But if they would make him like this really socially awkward, nerdy, hard to even be in the same room with type of Clark Kent, like today's socially awkward geek, could be an amazing character. Likewise with the Hulk. Anyway, so yeah, the early Ultimate Marvel stuff, and then as time progressed, it just slowly became more and more standard comic booky, which was still fine, and I'm still slowly reading my way through it via trade paperback, and I want to, now that they've closed out that universe, I do want to finish up reading the Ultimate Marvel universe. I buy most of the series in collected trade paperbacks. I didn't keep up with Fantastic Four, but like X-Men, the Avengers, Spider-Man, great stuff. I think that's been the most consistent in its quality. Just fantastic stuff in the Bendis Spider-Man. Yeah, really like a lot of that, especially the early, but really even after that, the Ultimate Marvel universe. And then DC's Identity Crisis, which was like a 6-issue series before the New 52. That was written by a guy who was known before then as being a novelist, and he wrote a really heavy story, and that really began, I think, the reinvention of the DC universe in very dark terms, which I enjoyed. That's my aesthetic in fiction tends to be serious. Ew! Oh, geez, they're jumping! So I think that's all I had to say about comics. Hey, just a reminder that this humble little YouTube channel is so dependent on people just like you. There are 3 main ways you can support this channel, and they're all over at spiritblade.com. The first is to purchase one of our sci-fi or fantasy audio dramas. Second is to give us a donation of any amount. And third, you can become a Spirit Blade insider and get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes monthly goodies. You can get more information on our About page over at spiritblade.com. Thanks so much.